What is going on, guys? We are back with another episode of our trade breakdown series. In today's video, I'm gonna be walking you guys through exactly how I made over $3,500 on AMD calls today. I'm gonna be walking you through this trade step by step from start to finish. Let's get into it right now. All right, guys, we are back for another episode. Now, before we get into this AMD trade, per usual, if you are enjoying these videos, please don't forget to leave us a like. And as always, guys, this was recorded and traded live inside the Discord. If you're interested in trying out the Discord, you can check out the link in the description below or in the replies below, and you can take 30% off using the code ALLCAPSSTAKE. That's going to give you 30% off the month of September, guys. Click that WAP link down in the replies and come check out the Discord. Now, let's get right into this AMD trade. Like I said, guys, really appreciate everyone that has shown love on the prior trade recap videos. You guys taking the 2 seconds to leave a like or leave us a positive reply really allows us to keep making these videos and really making the content the best it can be. So now let's get straight into this AMD trade, guys. As always, I try to keep things as simple and as easy as possible, just like on the PLTR and Google trade recap videos. So I'm going to break down the premise for this trade as easy as I can and explain it, like I said, as easy as possible. So if you guys watch the Sunday scan, this will make a lot of sense to you guys. If you guys aren't watching the free streams every week, make sure you guys are taking advantage of those. We stream live every day inside the Discord every single morning, and I walk through things just like this. Now, on this AMD trade, on the Sunday scan, I listed out where I wanted as an A+ risk reward area to be looking at calls. Now, it's important to understand the background of the chart before I enter a trade, right? I have to have conviction based on those higher time frames. We talk about it all the time. When in doubt, zoom out. And this could not be more true for this trade on AMD. Now, the key thing is you guys can see that AMD has been in a really large basing pattern, right? We've got about 12 weeks of consolidation here. And if you guys look at these past 2 red weeks that we had, right, you guys can see that we swept liquidity. You guys can see that the close on this weekly candle right here, guys, was that 105.45 area, right? And you guys can see that that 106.30 area was a major area of support in all these weeks, right? Now, remember that because that's going to be important. So if you're taking notes, we had a huge weekly support at 106.30, right? Now, what really led me to identify this as an A+ setup is when you see printing back-to-back weeks below this major key area of support like this, but you don't really get a substantial move down. Yes, we retested the 100 level, but for the most part, guys, we've really held this level pretty strong, right? We've held this 100 level really strong, and we just didn't get any true continuation to the downside. Now, when you have a bearish structure like this on a weekly chart, these candles, when you close below big support like this, that draws in a lot of shorts. And then this past week, right, we have this really strong candle that just comes right back up and reclaims that key support level. That is a short's worst nightmare, right? So people who are actively shorting the stock, this is a net negative for them to just see the very next weekly candle come right back over that support and close really strong like that. That tells me that there's a lot of shorts inside this name, right, that are, obviously now underwater if they entered in at this 106 support area, right? So before anything, we know that on a higher time frame, we've got a setup that could be explosive for more upside, right? This is the exact type of look that I look for, right? And this was truly an A+ setup to me based on that weekly structure. Now, as you guys know, the majority of my trades are planned out on the hourly time frame, right? So before we get into the daily chart on AMD, let's look at this hourly time frame on AMD. On the Sunday scan, guys, I listed out that this was the area that I wanted to be looking at for potential ads today, right? We broke out of this hourly consolidation pattern right on Friday. You guys can see we broke out through that 108 area. And so coming into today, guys, I wanted to see that resistance retested, right? So I wanted to see the 107 area get retested on AMD, which I mentioned. So this was my A+ risk reward ad area on AMD, right? So coming into today, guys, this was really the main focus that I was for me kind of coming into the morning. So if we come out to this hourly time frame, I'm going to enlarge everything. Really what led this to be, a full, position size trade for me. I had my, max position size on this. And I also bought a week of time. I wanted to preface that. A lot of the times I'll trade weekly expirations. In this case, I actually went out to the September 15th expiry on AMD. And that was for a good reason. Okay, so this is the hourly chart on AMD. All right. And what you guys can see is that since these lows that we printed at the 100 level, we've had a pretty clean hourly uptrend in place, right? Especially if we look here, right? We come in, we've really tested that trend well. If you go from the bottom of these wicks at the 101 area, and we've really had a decent hourly trend kind of building here. Now, for me, the reason that I sized so heavily into this trade, and I'm going to go over my entry here in 1 minute, was the fact that we had a beautiful bounce and liquidity sweep at our hourly trend line, right? So you can come down to this hourly trend, guys. You see how there's this longer wick down. What I did today was I simply added the 115 calls for September 15th. I bought them. My first ad was at $80 per contract, and then I took a full-size position, guys, at $66 per contract on those 115 calls. Now, the reason that I did this is we came into this hourly trend up here on AMD, which you can see right here. I tweeted this out to the Discord. I said, big picture idea for me. I took the 9/15 expiration, so I bought a week of time plus. And the two confluence points for me, right? We had a retest of that old resistance, which was now turning into support at 107. And we had our hourly liquidity sweep at hourly trend, right? So if we look at the 15-minute chart on AMD, guys, you can see right here, when we flushed into this hourly trend level, guys, we got a really nice test of, look at that key level, 106.30. Now, who remembers what that 106.30 level signified, right? That was a major area of weekly support. So given the fact that we were coming into that hourly uptrend and the fact that we were retesting a key weekly support level, guys, that gave me personally the conviction to add full size on this trade. So that full size position trade for me on AMD was right here, guys. As you can see, I'm going to show you guys my exact position on the 115 calls for next week right here. So I added full size position, guys. I had 60 at 67. I added a full size position for me. And then you can see right here, 45 contracts at a $76 per contract average, excuse me. So $76 per contract, I had 45 of them. So in total, I was risking $3,400 on this position, right? And I took my last full size ad off of that 106.30 position, right? That 106.30 level, excuse me, which was that major area of weekly support. And you guys can see that was at 1039. Right? So that was right here, right? And it's time stamped. So I know it looks like, oh, like man's just pointing out he took calls at the bottom. Well, right, you guys can clearly see full size position, 10:39 a.m., $76 per contract. We obviously bounced really, really nicely off of that level, guys. You can see, right, we had a really nice trend up off of that 106.30 level. Now, this all, for me personally, reverts back to the hourly chart, guys, right? When you get a really nice test of this hourly uptrend, for me, that's signaling that, more than likely than not, we are going to see buyers step into this zone. And really, like I said, guys, when you've tested this uptrend 1, 2, 3, now for the fourth time, right? For me, the risk on this trade was simply an hourly close below the 106.30 level. Clean and simple. I bought some time, so I was basically going to be risking about a 25% drawdown on my position if it went against me. But in this case, like I said, guys, we got an absolutely beautiful move. AMD, we're going to go back to the 15-minute. AMD really never looked back off that level, guys. We started to base in this 108.30 area, and I actually added some weekly calls. So this is something that I personally like to do if something is extremely high confidence in terms of the setup for me, guys. I will add some weekly exposure on top of the more dated calls. So you guys can see here, I added the AMD 115 weekly calls for $21 per contract as well, guys. And right after that is obviously when we got the Goldman headline. AMD was presenting at the Goldman conference, really started to ramp up that AI chatter, guys. And AMD got an absolutely massive move in the middle of the day. You can see we had this massive volume come in at 12 o'clock. We ripped all the way up to this 111.40 level, guys. This is where I scaled out about 40% of my position, right? Now, again, on this AMD trade, if we look at the higher time frame, guys, we are also trying to break out of a major area of weekly resistance and daily resistance, right? Now, these daily downtrend breaks have been quite the theme in this market. So personally, I held on to about half of my position because of the fact I knew that if we continue to push upside, guys, we had a really good chance of breaking out of this weekly and daily downtrend that AMD had been on, which can really result in some, huge upside in terms of, shorter expiration calls. So I was able to leave another half of my position, guys. I trimmed about 20% at that 110.30 level, started to continue to trim into these big candles after the Goldman AI headlines kind of came out. And then really, guys, where I started to trim the majority of my position was here in the afternoon. Once we got into this 111.82 level, guys, this is where I sold about 70% total of my AMD position here. So you guys can see I tweeted out to the Discord. I sold basically 32 of 45 contracts on those AMD calls for about $147 per contract. That was a 93% return from my entry, guys. And the only reason and the only way that I was able to net $3,500 off of a $3,400 position was I was selling the majority of my contract, guys, for 70, 80, 90, 100% plus, right? As you guys can see, I sold about 80% of my position here for over 107% and really started to scale out the majority of those. I sold 90% of my 115 position for the 15th of September at 126%, which was $172 per contract. And I let the weekly smaller size position run, right? So that is leaving me a lot of exposure to potential upside while I've now eliminated my downside. Right now, my worst possible case scenario is much lower on this trade because I've taken 90% of my profits out on the September calls, right? And so as we got into the end of the day, guys, we got to 134% on the 115 calls for next week. I sold all of that position, guys, up over a little bit over 130%. And I continued to let my 115 call position continue to run, which I am still in, looking for that daily downtrend break. I think the key takeaway from this trade, guys, that you're starting to see a theme, right, is really utilizing that hourly time frame to your advantage. If you go back and watch the Google trade recap video, it was the same thing. It was just shorting the breakdown of that hourly uptrend, right? And in this case, guys, this was as simple as waiting for AMD to come into that hourly uptrend level in a key area of that weekly support and hourly support at 106.30, which is the level that we referenced right back here, right, guys? Look at where that weekly support is sitting, 106.35. Look at where our low of the day was today, 106.30, right? We got the hourly liquidity sweep, right? So if we look at that hourly uptrend, you can see they took liquidity below 107. They closed the candle back above. And then look at, guys, it ripped directly off that hourly uptrend level all the way into, the hourly resistance point, which was our target, right? So going back and looking at that hourly, I really think is such a crucial time frame, honestly, to pay attention to. So the last thing I didn't mention, guys, was my profit targets on this trade were relatively simple. Pre-market highs in this 109.30 area was my first target. Obviously, because we got the AI news and the Goldman headline kind of simultaneously, really it gapped right through my targets right away. So, oftentimes when you follow your plan, guys, good things happen. And so my take profits on this trade were 109.70, 110.50, and then 111.40, which we hit all three take profits, letting some 115 call runners go. But again, I think the key lesson from this trade, guys, is really utilizing that hourly uptrend or that hourly time frame in general to your advantage. And when you plan out these setups, guys, on a Sunday, or in this case on a Monday, right, on a short week, it really leaves it to be just execution once you get into the week itself, which makes things a lot easier and removes emotions. So I hope you guys enjoyed this trade recap video. This was an absolutely insane trade that resulted in over $3,500 in profit in about 3 hours, which is an insane return, and couldn't have been happier with it. So I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. Hopefully you guys are taking at least one positive lesson away from each one of these. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.